As you mentioned, Hammy was with you during many of the road trips for your research. Can you tell us a little bit more about that working relationship? Like, specifically, how did his reactions and presence influence your perspective on the places you were investigating?
I think that I set out on this, epic road trip, this journey, hoping for something very specific. I really wanted to meet the people who experimented on him and the people who made the decisions to breed him. And I had no idea that that was just impossible. Um, and even though I knew pretty early on I wasn't going to get exactly what I wanted, I wanted something like that. I mean, I wanted to have some connection. I wanted people to apologize to Hammy, and I wanted to, I was curious whether they would change by meeting him. So it really was all through this Hammy lens. I was trying to understand why why was he and beagles like him bred in the first place? Um, why are we still testing on dogs? So, I mean, does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, totally. I like the idea of looking at things from, I mean, obviously, I love the idea of looking at things from the perspective of the animal. It makes me think like of many, many years ago, like maybe 20 years ago or almost 20 years ago, Mariann had a cat who died suddenly. And I remember, I'm sorry to talk about you like you're not in the room, Mariann, but your grieving process with that, and you just kept saying all her little thoughts or all his little thoughts and obviously or giant thoughts like we don't know and that always stuck with me, just that sentence, like all his little thoughts, because it's like their entire world. And so yeah, I mean, when you're on a trip like that and you're looking at it from the perspective of the animal and all their little thoughts, all their big thoughts, whatever, it really does fundamentally change your experience and you.
Yeah, and Hannah became so much more to me. I mean, I loved him from early on, but I think that the fact that we did this together and we set out to do this, we were so bonded. And I was looking at him differently. I mean, of course, I know that these animals all have their own personalities. They're all individuals. They have fears and likes and dislikes. And, even among the group of seven that came out of the lab together, they were very different and they went to different homes, and some went with other animals and some didn't. So, but I think all this time we spent together, I was really, I mean, I knew him so well. I knew what scared him. I was so much more attentive, to the point that I was like, wow, I mean, how can I love this being anymore? And yet I did.
Yeah, it really is unbelievable how much we loved them.
I
It's
know.
just
Yeah.
sometimes well, let's not go down that road because I want to talk a little bit about the subject of the book too, and the people who were the subject of the book. And you said you wanted an apology or something akin to that, and you wanted to know what had really happened, and all of this became much more difficult to accomplish than you thought. But you did, like, tell me what your initial assumptions were about the people you would be meeting who were involved in animal research, and how maybe some of them were true, and in what ways maybe they became a little bit more complicated, and can you just go through that process a bit?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I really didn't know much going into this, and I have friends who are animal activists, and I've seen and read and heard, all about that perspective. And I knew going into this that these were not monsters working in the labs. I knew that generally, these are not. It's not these big terrible things that happen, or exceptions to, this is just like the everyday terrible that happens to these animals. So I knew that these were humans. I thought I might find kind people on both sides of this debate, which of course I did. And, in terms of the researchers, I did get some insight into where they were coming from. And they generally are really concerned with bettering human health. Sometimes they've got somebody in their family who's been sick or has an incurable illness. They're all inspired in different ways, just like animal activists are. But, I definitely understood better that messy gray area in the middle because, look, I talked to a mom whose son has muscular dystrophy, and she said, if dog research can help 5% or advance this 5%, like I'm all in. I don't have human children, and I can imagine what it's like for her. But, even when you're not talking about something that extreme, I mean, we are all benefiting from advances from animals. We all have taken drugs and been the beneficiaries of medical devices. So, I don't think we can go out and say, like, we are never going to engage in this because it's just impossible. I mean, the big question is now is like, why is it not shifting more? Because we've been talking about alternatives for generations. We've been doing this. We've learned a lot over centuries about the human body and illnesses. It just seems like we are stuck. The animal researchers train young scientists to do animal research, and there's a lot of money, billions of dollars that goes into that. And it seems like it's time to make a shift.
Yeah. Oh, and what would you say is the current status of non-animal testing methods like organ chips and AI modeling? And what do you see as the future of these technologies and impacting the use of animals?
I think that there's some really exciting things going on. I went to visit the Emulate lab that makes the organ chips. There's organoids and AI and computer modeling and so much human data. And it seems like a combination of these different methods is pretty effective and really promising. It's not going to happen overnight. And I think we need to direct a lot more funding to develop these methods. Um, it's encouraging that this administration is talking about it, and whether or not that's going to lead to new policy and new regulations, maybe a change in the Animal Welfare Act, which needs to be updated. It's really hard to say, but at least it's part of the dialogue now more than it has been. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think there are people fighting for it and there are people fighting against it. And the people fighting for it are making some progress. But, like in everything in changing behavior towards animals, it's a long haul. I mean, there's obviously money, there's also habit. And there's this framing. And if we can go back to what you were saying before, I don't know whether we're going to move past this framing of human lives are more important than animal lives, and that's why this is okay. I don't think most people want to argue that no, animal lives are exactly the same as human. I mean, even if they believe that, it's not a great argument. But there's got to be a number that's too high. I mean, that can't be just the framing. If we had to kill every animal on the planet and torture and kill them to save one human being from dying right now, of course they will die of something else. Obviously, nobody's going to say that's okay. So somewhere in between there's a line over which it's not okay. And it's just the way we frame that argument that I think always makes the answer, yes, whatever the research is, it's justified because it might help a human. I don't know what this question is, but do you have an idea of where that line is?
Well, I thought about that so much because look, I kind of go through these mental gymnastics. I'm like, well, what if Hammy was used for something that helped 1 million people? Like, would that be okay? And it was just so hard to get my head around it. So I'm thankful that there are ethicists who deal with this every day because, I was like, don't use them for anything, because I'd gotten to know him and I loved him so much. But, certainly we can update what the 3 R's are now, which, came into being in 1959, which is reduce, replace, refine animal research. And, there are really good arguments for having an upper limit of pain, for example, or requiring researchers to use alternatives if they're available instead of just saying, oh, maybe it's not good enough. No, you have to use that instead of the animal. So there are so many improvements that could be made there.